out all this probable cause that you put before a judge.
George Soros.
right. George
Soros gets Hillary Clinton on the blower.
You're right. You get one of his typing helpers to help put together.
He presses the deep state speed dial. Sorry for interrupting.
So, yeah. So you go to a judge. All of them in this instance were appointed by Republicans, and they approve it or not. And then you have to go back on a regular basis to get it reviewed and renewed. So it's a pretty closely held process here.
And what new facts did we learn from this application being released, even though it was heavily redacted?
We learned a number of things. I mean, one, I guess I don't know that we learned this for the first time, but we learned that Devin Nunes is a discredited liar. And I don't know if you want to get into this now or wait a little later. Okay.
Let's do it.
So remember when this was all being discussed in the first place. Dumb Devin, our friend, and if you want Devin Nunes to leave Congress, check out Andrew Jans for Congress's Twitter account, webpage, wherever you want to go.
Just go Google his name. You'll get there.
His www.
Yeah, go to his www.
Devin tried to say a bunch of things. One was that the Steele dossier, we all remember Chris Steele, he put together the P-tape dossier, was the sole basis of the FISA application. That is not true. Nunes also tried to say that the FISA application didn't say who funded the Steele dossier, that it came from a partisan source. That is not true. There's like an entire page of notes about how the source might have been compromised, and the judge is allowed to evaluate on the merits. We also learned that the FISA application wasn't solely based on the Steele dossier, and that it was approved by 4 Republican judges. And then it got longer every time because new information was added, presumably because they learned things that were relevant or important about Carter Page in the process. And so we've learned that, everything the Republicans have done in service of Donald Trump, trying to defend him from charges of collusion, has been a lie. But the bigger problem here with Trump is that he tries to conflate the Page surveillance with the look into the collusion generally, the investigation into Russian interference in our election, and they're simply not the same thing.
Well, the FBI applied for this warrant in October of 2016, which was months after Carter Page left the Trump campaign. So he was no longer an employee of the Trump campaign, so the idea that it was to sabotage the Trump campaign is sort of silly. And it was already months after they had already opened an investigation into connections between Trump officials and the Russian government. So
because of George Papadopoulos.
So the idea that Republicans keep pushing, the Republican candidates keep pushing, the whole Mueller investigation is based on a dirty dossier and this application is completely false. They opened the investigation after George Papadopoulos got drunk
in London
with
some Australians he didn't know,
and blabbed to an Australian diplomat about meeting a professor who offered all kinds of dirt on Hillary Clinton. That's what began the investigation. In this application, the FBI offered evidence that Page was the subject of, quote, targeted recruitment by Russia in its efforts to sabotage the 2016 election, and that he'd been, quote, collaborating and conspiring with the Russian government. They had probable cause to believe that. That is not a small thing.
No. Also,
that is not a small thing.
Carter took a trip to Russia in July of 2016. The Steele dossier alleged that he met with senior Russian officials. He lied and denied that. And then when pressed by the House Intelligence Committee, he finally admitted that he did meet with senior Russian officials, just not the ones mentioned in the Steele dossier. So Carter hasn't shown himself to be the most trustworthy narrator of his own life and events.
Which, if you've ever seen him on TV, would not surprise you at all.
Yeah, look, I think there's one thing we certainly don't understand, which is what makes Carter Page tick. What gets him out of it?
I don't care how many warrants for surveillance you've got on Carter Page.
Yeah,
you're not figuring that out.
You're going to need a mystic and a divining rod and I don't know what.
I mean, it's also important, too, because the whole thing, the Steele dossier, because it was paid for by, the Clinton campaign or the Democratic Party or law firms connected to the Democrats, it's garbage, right? It says in the application, in subsequent FISA renewals, the Department of Justice provided additional information obtained through multiple independent sources that corroborated Steele's reporting.
Right.
This is important. They did not just take the fucking Steele dossier and put it in an application and say to the judges, now go approve it. They independently corroborated the reporting that they needed to get the application with various other individuals, which is why the judges approved it.
But another very important point was, even if they hadn't done that, in the same breath, Trump and his asshole associates try to claim that the Steele dossier is biased and should be the basis for a FISA application. But they argue that Clinton Cash, an Oppo research book paid for with Steve Bannon's money, should lead to an FBI investigation of Hillary. So they are lying idiots who are trying to have both sides, and it's simply not how the process works. You are allowed to be a witness and have some sort of political or personal bias against the person you are discussing.
Yeah, it's just it basically boils down to this: the old conspiracy peddled by Trump, Republicans, and all their favorite pundits on